So here we are, my second video. Isn't that wonderful? And I've finally fixed the fairly finicky fuck-ups from last time. I've got a new microphone, so my voice no longer sounds like it's being filtered through an arse. I've changed to a solid purple background, so there will no longer be any of those bloody clone stamp scars. I've finally fixed the cropping issue. And now that I've got proper 720p, I've got room to stretch me legs. And also I've got room to introduce, this thing, which, it helps stem the pain of crushing loneliness. And, it was either this or the midgets I keep in my basement, who just won't stop complaining! And really, it just wasn't kawaii enough for the job. Anyhow, let's talk about what's really important here. Family, love, and self-respect. Ha! Not fucking likely. No, what's really important is Painkiller Hell and Damnation, developed by Nordic Games, and is a remaster of the original Painkiller, which was developed by People Can Fly in 2004. Now, when I told my lazily copy-pasted clone that I was making a video about Painkiller, they asked me why the hell I'd want to make a video about Nurofen. So, it's fair to say that this game has had very little exposure. So let me start this review with as little ambiguity as possible. Painkiller Hell and Damnation is the single greatest shooter I have ever played in my life, and is exactly the kind of game God would make if he ever became emotionally unstable. Now, let me qualify this a smidge. This is the best shooter I've ever played. And while I think that games like Spec Ops The Line and Bioshock Infinite are better games, I don't qualify them as shooters. No, I prefer to label them under the genre of mind fuck-em-ups. Anyhow, getting back to Painkiller. It's about a man named Daniel, whose sole defining characteristic is he bears a striking resemblance to Mr. Bean. Now, the story is that Mr. Bean and his lovely wife were driving along the road and suddenly, bam! He crashes the car, wife goes to heaven, while Mr. Bean is sent to hell for some reason. And then Death shows up and starts taking a liking to him. Not entirely sure why. But it's probably because he's good at killing things, I guess. Because immediately after they meet, Mr. Bean is tasked with collecting a completely arbitrary number of souls because the legions of the damned are getting a knock on for some reason. Again, this isn't explained very well. I mean, come on, you'd think a war against the physical embodiment of death would be fairly one-sided. Anyhow, there's also a woman named Eve who isn't important in any way, shape, or form. And Jesus fucking Christ, this is so fucking convoluted. Anyhow, we're not here for the story, are we? No, we're here for the gunplay. Because I guarantee you, just listing the weapons that are in this game will be enough to make you want to buy it. So here's what you got to play with. You've got a gun that shoots shurikens and lightning. You've got a demo saw disc launcher that can extract people's souls, because that's how demo saws work, I guess. Next, you got a crossbow type arrangement that nails the motherfuckers to walls with entire trees. It's also a grenade launcher, because why not? You've got a minigun with an RPG duct taped to it, and finally, you have the titular Painkiller, which is a sort of rotating blade type arrangement, which acts as your primary melee attack. It allows you to bloodily tear through the hordes of the damned without even slowing. All of this is shown in modern prettiness and gore physics, and as a backdrop of gritty atmospheric settings, including cathedrals, dungeons, and a carnival for some reason. I kinda thought hell was more of a pain and damnation sort of place. But hey, hell could have been bought out by Disney for all I know, which wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. But barring that, it's a callback to the shooters of old. It's fast, it's fun, it's properly exciting, and I bloody love it. Hang about. In my exuberance, I had completely forgotten that I had gone a whole 4 minutes without irrationally hating something. Unacceptable! Let's start with the main character. When I said that all I could remember about him is that he looks like Mr. Bean, I was not joking. He is so bland and uninteresting, nicknaming him after someone who is charismatic as Mr. Bean would be a compliment, because he suffers from the same bloody typical problem of being a white, mildly bearded male protagonist that seems to plague the majority of games these days. All of whom are voiced by Nolan North for some reason. Anyway, getting back on topic, the game ends really anticlimactically. The final level starts with a cutscene where Mr. Bean presents his demo saw soul sucker to Mr. Death to count up all the souls that have been collected thus far. However, he reveals that he's only collected 6,999 souls out of the required 7,000. However, I checked the statistics afterwards, and they said I had only collected 900 souls. So either Mr. Bean did a lot of work between levels, or the Lord of Death is really bad at math. Anyhow, Death says in order to get the last soul, you need to kill Eve. the completely pointless woman. And at this point, I was practically yelling at the screen. Now, the job of a story writer is to make us sympathize with their protagonists. And if I'm agonizing less about killing one of their characters than I would eating a fucking waffle, then I'm sorry, Mr. Story Writer, but you have failed. Anyhow, Mr. Bean refuses and Death kills Eve anyway, thus initiating the final boss against the God of Death. And as a fan of JRPGs, this is a concept I'm very familiar with. And as I have previously stated, any altercation against Death himself would be a fairly fruitless exercise. And as such, this boss fight sucks ass. Actually, the boss fights deserve particular mention because they all suck ass. They're usually just single giant motherfuckers with unbelievably slow melee attacks and bullshit undodgeable ranged attacks. One boss is particularly guilty of this because it's just the 60-meter Colossus from Attack on Titan. And, spoiler alert, you don't have those weird grapple thingies. But the worst boss by far has to be the fight in a swamp against the Great Mighty Pooh, because not only does it barely attack you, but it is defeated by blowing fucking bubbles at it. I wish I was fucking kidding. But I'm not going to hold it against the game, because the reason why the bosses are so shit is that the very idea of boss fights is completely incompatible with the formula of the game. That formula being sending plethoric legions of enemies to deal with Mr. Bean in the same way that a plethoric legion of raspberries would be sent to deal with a blender, with similar results. And that's what makes the game fun. Enemies at all angles to be smeared across the walls. So focusing your attention on a single enemy that doesn't even smear on anything when you're done with it kinda sucks the excitement out of it. And while I'm still complaining, the action is very on and off. When there are enemies, an epic guitar riff would play in the background, but when there isn't, it's dead silent. So at that point, I just put my own music on. But then the action would start up again before I could pause it. And believe me when I say, watching Mr. Bean eviscerate a horde of demonic Salars of Astora with a demo saw, with satirical polka playing in the background, adds whole new definition to the term surreal. While I'm on the topic, the enemies are wonderfully varied in this game. From knights to skeletons to druids to orphan children to fat bastards to evil clowns to sacks of potatoes, all of which reacts viscerally to the ridiculously over-the-top gore physics. Christ, I must have been a lawnmower in a previous life because my brain is hardwired to enjoy this kind of thing. And yeah, I've had a lot to complain about, but all of it falls by the wayside when I remember that you can turn druids into spam by shooting them in the face with a shotgun. And then freezing them, because that's how shotguns work. It's so over the top and completely ridiculous that it's absolutely brilliant. It's available on Steam and you should totally buy it, because you will not have more fun with your computer until they invent virtual sex for the Oculus Rift. And even then it would be a toss-up. Look, those who are still watching, I'm gonna have to ask a bit of a favour here. These videos, they take a long time to make, and personally, I'm gonna sound petty, but I'd kinda like some payoff for this. Not money, but just some recognition, some exposure, if you will. So, you know what? Go on. Go out there. Tell your mum. Tell your friends. Tell your fucking dog. I do not care. As long as you get out there and share my video, share my channel, you might even catch the attention of an internet celebrity, you never know. But that's just wishful thinking, isn't it? But anyhow, go out there, get the word out, do it.